Time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go!
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, and we're the pod.
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod, and another week gone by with Star Wars The Bad Batch, which we're going to get into this week as episode 6, I believe it is, called Tribe. And on another note, we got some cool news from Star Wars Celebration, more guests announced recently, and a new book coming out by E.K. Johnson. So we'll talk about things as such, as well as Star Wars Visions Volume 2, all the episode titles announced, Star Wars games and board games pre and post Disney era. We got a bunch of stuff on the roster today, and joining us is your co-host Blake in the podcast. So let's get into the show and start chatting Star Wars.
Another happy landing.
All right, here we are again. Welcome back, sir.
Hey, good to be back as always. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Another day, another episode, you know?
That's right. Yeah, we saw the return of a very, well, I wouldn't say prominent, but just, like a recognizable character from the Clone Wars, which we were introduced to in season 4, I think it was. Gungi.
Is this season 4?
Yeah,
Man.
I think it was like season 4 or something, yeah.
I always think it's earlier than that, but you know why? It's probably because I usually skip 1.5 seasons.
Right, yeah. Anytime
I'm one of those guys.
Anytime you do the binge, you always skip two seasons out of the 6, right? Or the 7.
I just find season 1 doesn't have a lot of episodes that I really like. Like, to me, it didn't hit its stride. Like same as I'm rewatching like The Simpsons or South Park. I never watched the early seasons.
Yeah, that's fair. There's a few episodes here and there that I actually like out of season 1, like quite a bit, but I know what you're talking about. I know, there's definitely a fair few in there that are like less than mediocre, I guess.
Yeah. And you know what? I bet I would watch it more if they're in chronological order, because I'm too lazy to look up a list and skip around.
Right. And I think that's the biggest downside when doing Clone Wars, like for anyone going through the show, like chronological is definitely the recommended way of doing it. And you also do get a bit more variation when going back and forth, like, because you are flipping between the first 3 seasons for quite a while. So it does break up season 1 a bit more. But if you just kind of binge season 1 as a solid season in release order, really there's only like a handful of episodes that are kind of good. One of them is like Rookies, which is the episode that introduced Echo and Fives, and
Which is one of the biggest culprits for being in the wrong order.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there was that one, which was pretty good. I really enjoyed Trespass, which is the one with the Talls, and the winter. Yeah, that one was pretty cool.
The ones you're naming are all the ones I remember.
Yeah.
And there's a handful that I maybe just watch them less frequently, or they're just more forgettable.
The Ryloth arc at the very end as well, which was pretty cool. It started off, the first episode was like a space episode, and then the second one was introduced Cham Syndulla, and the Techno Union Wat Tambor came into the show, and they had Mace Windu and everything like that. Sorry, that was the third one. The second one was with Obi-Wan and introduced Waxer and Boyle, and they were introduced to what's her name again? The little Twi'lek girl.
Does she have a name?
Numa.
Or did she just-
Numa, that's the one. Numa. Yeah, she does have a
Oh,
name
okay.
because she showed up in Rebels and she was like, talking and actually had.
Man, I didn't know that was the same character.
Yeah. So, lots of connections there. But that was a pretty cool arc. And then the finale to season 1 was just Hostage Crisis. I've always liked that one a lot. I think that one's the standout for the season for me, which is introducing Cad Bane to Star Wars fans. And it was an attempt to rescue Zero the Hutt from the Republic prison. And they held all the senators hostage in the building. And Anakin didn't have his lightsaber because he had that whole fling moment with Padme in her office and gave her his lightsaber and said, "This weapon is my life, and I'm giving it to you," sort of thing.
Got him in trouble.
Yeah. So I really like that one too. That one's actually pretty good. But yeah. Speaking of which, actually, I think that was the highest viewed episode of the season according to Wikipedia. So there you go. Other than the premiere and the second episode.
Right.
So it's
Yeah,
the
that
third.
makes sense.
Sorry, the third highest viewed episode in the US.
What about the movie? Where's the movie?
That's a good question, actually. That's not on here because it doesn't go by TV viewers, so I think the count is different. But as we know, it made some money.
I don't know if it broke even or not.
Yeah. Oh man, I hate to slam Clone Wars because I love that show. It's my favorite Star Wars animated show ever, but it's not perfect like anything else. I mean, it had its start, right? But look where it ended up.
Yep, so true.
And it could be Bad Batch as well. I mean, we're gonna get into an episode today in which I'm not overly fond of, but you know what? I mean, again, it's just one of those things. It's like the show will go on, and I'm convinced it'll get better. It's gonna find its footing. They're gonna figure these characters out, and we're gonna get better arcs in the future. So.
We'll run out of episodes to do that. That's the issue, right?
Yeah. I hate to think they're dragging the show on to try and make it like 7 seasons long or whatever, but it is what it is. So first off, I should have started with this. By the time this episode of our podcast premieres, we are celebrating today Star Wars Podcast Day in 2023, which our first Star Wars Podcast Day celebration episode was last year, and we somehow missed the one before that, but this is the third inaugural Star Wars Podcast Day. So for those who don't
Missed the
know,
cue.
yeah,
When you announced it, you're supposed to play the celebration music from End of Phantom Menace.
oh man, yeah, I totally missed that. I didn't have it ready to go.
No, man, come on. All this prep time.
Yeah.
Got put to use.
Yeah. But yeah, so for those who don't know, this special fan occasion, it's the 24th anniversary this year of Jedi Talk, which was the very first Star Wars related podcast, which premiered back in February 7th, 1999, before The Phantom Menace saw its release in theaters. How crazy is that? That Star Wars podcasts have been around since before the prequel trilogy by a couple months, but still
counts.
Still counts.
Yep.
Yeah, this was before 99. People were
That's
still
early days for podcasting.
It is. Yeah, I mean 1999, that would have been podcasting, uploading your tracks to a website hoping people would find it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this was before the iPod really kind of got going.
And your gear, I feel like you'd have to have proper studio recording gear for it to be any level of quality.
Oh yeah, totally, yeah. So that's a big one too. Now so many people have the accessibility and the technology to run a podcast from their phone and just coast with that. There's so many well-made pieces of software out there. Anyone with a laptop can start up a podcast, and again, it doesn't need to sound superb quality, so long as your content is entertaining and people are listening. I mean, then you can consider it successful, right? So
Yeah, so true.
yeah, so I mean, here we are among like 4,000 other Star Wars podcasts on the internet, and I don't know how many of them are celebrating Star Wars Podcast Day, but
All of them, I'd hope.
I would hope, I would hope a whole bunch, more and more each year, right? So anyone listening out there, Thank you again for tuning into Star Wars Escape Pod, which is our Star Wars podcast. But if you do want to find more Star Wars Podcast Day results on Google or any other participating Star Wars podcast, you can use the hashtag Star Wars Podcast Day 2023 or SWPD 2023. But if you do go and check any of those out, promise us you'll be back, because we do love you here on Star Wars Escape Pod. Drop 5
Don't forget
stars.
about us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Drop 5 stars and leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. That helps us out a lot, helps us the algorithms, helps us kind of keep the name visible in the haystack of 4,000 plus Star Wars podcasts at this point. So it does wonders, trust me.
Dang.
It does wonders. Right, cool. So The Bad Batch, Season 2, Episode 6, Tribe. I'll do the summary just like last time. Again, wasn't a super in-depth episode, so we'll just talk about our opinions on the episode, and we don't need to spend the whole episode of Star Wars Podcast Day talking about this, but here we go. The Bad Batch meets the Vanguard Axis for a job until Omega ends up helping Gungi, a Wookiee Jedi youngling, escaped from his cartel captors, and intending to return him to his homeworld, the Bad Batch finds Kashyyyk being ravaged by a group of Trandoshan mercenaries working for the Empire. After winning a local tribe's trust, the clones join the Wookiees and the indigenous wildlife in their fight against their Imperial opponents. The aggressors are eventually defeated, and Gungi is reunited with his people. So that's the episode. It was pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It reintroduced Gungi from the Clone Wars back into animated Star Wars. And
We knew he was coming due to the trailer.
Yeah.
They did advertise that.
That's
It was pretty obvious that it was going to be him.
Yeah. So when this episode rolled around, I was like, all right, this is the Gungi episode. But yeah, Vanguard Axis. One of the highlights for me of this episode, that was really cool. I loved the design of the space station. I loved the idea that there's like a gangster robot gang.
Yeah, I was wondering what was going on with that. So like, is that new canon?
I guess so. I mean, I wasn't entirely sure. I don't recognize the name of it. But
I wonder if they were like a front for something, like, because they're all droids, right?
yeah, it could have been a front for something. But if you Google Vanguard Axis, nothing comes up. So I imagine it's just kind of like a new thing to Star Wars. It says this page was made 8 days ago or something. So this is the first canon appearance of anything as such. But I do love the idea that there's droids smart enough out there that they've kind of just come together and built other droids with their own programming and made themselves a thing, right? Like, I mean,
yeah, that was pretty cool too. Because like, how did they first start? Was there a gangster that had a droid that he programmed and then went rogue, or he died and it took over, or did maybe a droid just live so long that, and because they, like R2, if the memories aren't wiped, they eventually basically gain their own consciousness.
Yeah,
and then maybe decided that's the route it should go. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. The whole concept to me is pretty cool. And I thought it was worth mentioning that there's actually spoilers for anyone who's planning to play KOTOR 2. There's a crime syndicate. That's what I'm looking for.
Right.
There's a crime syndicate that you find out, it's revealed that their leader is a rogue AI that was programmed to save the planet Telos, and the only way that the computer program, the AI, was able to figure it out was to get enough money to basically replant the planet, or else it was going to just die from the Sith attack in the previous game. And to get the money, the Republic couldn't afford it, so it itself made a crime syndicate to sell drugs and get the income to save the planet.
Yeah, that sounds somewhat kind of, well, I don't want to compare that to like the very, very tame kind of kids version of like, but
but just the concept of some like computer going rogue, or like a droid going rogue and like doing, like making its own crime syndicate, I just find fascinating and super cool.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I did love that a lot. I think that was probably my most favorite part of this entire episode, to be honest. So I hate to kind of throw away the positivity cards so fast, but yeah, I mean, yeah. So Gungi is back. Anyone who doesn't remember Gungi, you can watch the I believe it's called The Gathering arc from Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and you'll get 3 episodes of Gungi action. It's a story arc in which Ahsoka goes with Master Yoda to Ilum, accompanying a group of younglings. And they all go into the caves of Ilum to get their first lightsaber crystal. And the story arc follows after that initial mission, and pirates end up raiding their ship, and it's Master Yoda, I believe, is not with them at this time, and but Ahsoka is, and it's basically Ahsoka and the younglings versus a bunch of pirates, and then they get caught up in like a bunch of stuff, and eventually Grievous comes after them, and like there's a whole bunch of shenanigans that kind of happen. So it's pretty cool. And I guess now we know, Gungi from the trailer, obviously Gungi survived the purge. So it makes me wonder like where he was, during the whole Order 66 business. I guess being a youngling, he wouldn't have had a Jedi Master. Like no one would have been personally teaching him other than Yoda. So it makes me wonder.
It's questionable. Like if he was old enough, we don't actually know his age. He might have been taken on as a early apprentice.
Yeah, just the way that the summary kind of still describes him as a youngling just kind of tells me that because he's not a Padawan, no one's taken him on yet, right?
I feel like that makes it harder, because then how would he have survived Order 66? Because would he not have been...
It would have been like Reva.
The temple?
Yeah. So it would have been like Reva from Kenobi, right? Like her and her friends were kind of running through the temple, and there was Jedi Masters trying to protect them and shield them from clones and stuff. So I imagine Gungi was probably somewhere in the temple, maybe, possibly, able to kind of get out before all the craziness started. But yeah, I mean, who knows, right? Like I guess maybe that's a story that we'll get eventually, but it's actually kind of intriguing to me that there's more younglings, like more and more as the canon has gone by. Disney has kind of, the new canon of Lucasfilm has kind of introduced us to more survivors of the purge, because before all this, we didn't have confirmation that Ahsoka survived, right? Before Disney took over, Clone Wars was a thing, but we didn't know what happened to Ahsoka, right? So, now we have Ahsoka that survived. Now we have Cal Kestis. Now we have like Ezra Bridger, Kanan Jarrus, all the Inquisitors, which were previously Jedi, right? Like there's all these different, now we got Gungi, so there's all these characters that are like, wow. Like
I like that they're doing that.
Yeah.
Because originally... we were all just assuming that they were all killed, but there was like tens of thousands of Jedi. So I think the fact that they were all killed seems like a bit of a stretch to me.
Right. It does seem unlikely. Yeah. So I'm definitely not saying I don't dislike that at all, but it is kind of interesting that we are getting, more reveals that these people or these characters have survived somehow. And, maybe now they're trying to find a new path to kind of live in the galaxy without their family, without their home, everything that they've ever known. And Gungi being such a young Wookiee, he's got a huge long lifespan ahead of him. So, that opens up some possibilities. Like maybe we'll get some sequels to the sequels, and maybe Gungi will be like a character, right? Like, so
I don't know if I could deal with that much Wookiee growling.
Too many Wookiees, yeah.
Whole season of it.
Wookiee and Gungi like pair up.
Oh my gosh, I've got enough of the audiobooks. I feel like.
Yeah. So what did you not like about this episode? Because I can share but I want to hear what you didn't like about this episode.
I would like to have seen more of the. Like knowing that the Empire is soon going to have a massive slave trade on Kashyyyk, I'd like to see more of the beginnings of that. As far as being on Kashyyyk and what potential could have happened in this episode. But the other thing, it's like I feel like I like this episode more than you did. I thought being there and seeing the relationship between the Trandoshan slavers and the Empire was actually pretty cool. I think that was a step in the direction I wanted it to go. At the same time, it did feel a little treaded on. I know we got the spiders again, which was basically just right out of Rebels. It's almost identical to what happened in that series.
Yeah.
As far as like gripes though, I do feel like we've got a lot of filler episodes in a row.
Yeah. And I'll backpedal just a bit. Like I did appreciate the whole Trandoshan Imperial pair up sort of thing. I
thought that was
like
neat because it was almost like, to me, that was building on why the Empire started the Wookiee slave trade to begin with.
Totally. Yeah, totally. It really does kind of shed some more light on what's actually going on in Kashyyyk, and it also does paint a really good picture as to why Black Chrysanthemum hates Trandoshan so much. So anyone who's like saw the Book of Boba Fett and was kind of confused by why he tears off the limbs of that Trandoshan in Garsa Fwip's saloon, it's pretty much just because the Trandoshans have a thing with Wookiees, right? Like they're just constantly either hunting them or killing them or selling them into slave trade or whatever. And in Black Chrysanthemum's case, the Trandoshans, I believe it was Trandoshans, took him and sold him into the gladiator business. So he really has a thing against Trandoshans. So that's most Wookiees though.
That's true.
So it does shed a bit of light on that for sure.
There's even a little more to it than that, because even prior to the Empire being on planet, the Trandoshans have always, because the Trandosha is their neighboring planet, and they, for thousands, whatever, millennia, they would do hunting parties, which is kind of like the Trandoshan lifestyle. They're all like hunters, right? So they would go to Kashyyyk and try to hunt big game, which was the Wookiees, and they would capture them and skin them and sell their furs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically like the fur trade, but with Wookiees, which is crazy.
Yeah, which is pretty nuts, because like if you think about it, like that's just another like race of alien in the galaxy that's just like as equal as they are, right? Yeah, so it's pretty vile, pretty gruesome, I think, when you think about it. But
well, Trandoshans are not a good species,
right? yeah, that we can agree.
The vast majority. That's not to go on a tangent here, but that's always why I thought it was super weird that one of the in the High Republic novels, the current Chancellor is Trandoshan.
Is it the current Chancellor? I know there's a Jedi that's
I think
Trandoshan.
so.
There's the skier.
There's that too. Am I getting it wrong?
Skier, the Jedi.
Pictured it as a Trandoshan as well.
There is, yeah. There's and
there's a female though.
Sid is also like Sid from the Bad Batch is also Trandoshan. I mean, it's easy to forget that too. But I guess like not all of them are bad, I guess. But it is kind of like
their historical like lifestyle,
right? Yeah.
Their home planet is generally
not favorable,
rough.
yeah. So yeah, no, I would agree with you in the sense as well that this episode is just more filler, and I wasn't a huge fan of that. I really want to get back to the main story of Crosshair and like what happened with Cody. What's going on that planet that we saw the Kaminoan scientist lady get dropped off at, the big training facility where they're training all the TK units by the Republic commandos are all, that was cool. I want to get back to that stuff, right? And
did they wrap that up?
No, that's the thing. It's like left open-ended, in a way that like season 1 ended that way. That was like the very last scene. It's like, okay, cool. Season 2 is going to pick up that story, and so far we're like a quarter way into the season.
Crickets,
and or even just over a quarter at least, and it's still like what's going on, right? Like we're 2 episodes away from the halfway point, so I'm a little intrigued as to where they're going with this. I mean, yes, it's cool to see little like stories like this every now and again, but like you said, it's like do they really have to cram all the filler episodes in a row? Like it's just, I don't know. It doesn't really agree with me too much, right?
No, fair enough.
So, yeah, I mean, but I think that covers like our. So let's do the rating, shall we?
Hold on, I got some notes we can go over.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about a few of them here though. Yeah, a lot of it. The first half of my notes were all the droids are cool. Basically, synopsis.
Yep, we did that. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought the way they revealed Gungi was actually pretty cool.
That,
like, he
yeah,
was-
that's true. Yeah.
How he was kind of like hidden, right? Like you just thought he was like another Wookiee slave in the trade. It kind of wasn't revealed until he actually pulled his lightsaber from that droid.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
thought
that's
that was
true.
pretty. I thought that was pretty cool. But man, what is with Omega just constantly wandering off and then getting everyone in trouble?
Oh man. Like
It's like every episode this happens.
it's like yeah. Yeah, it's been a constant for her, hasn't it?
Yeah, I feel like there wouldn't be a storyline. They just like work and get paid if she wasn't around. Instead, they work and never get paid.
Yeah, that's true actually. Anytime they take on a job, it's like they never get money for it.
No, they usually cost them.
Yeah. Yeah, see, like, it's cool to do stories like this where you have a bunch of people trying to make their way, you know, mercenary, whatever you want to call them. And yeah, they're protagonists, so they will do, you know, relatively like the right thing, or the jobs that'll, you know, be kind of morally in the you know, direction of what makes them a protagonist. But at the same time, it's like, okay, what are they actually doing to survive? Because, like, you know, in order for me to kind of buy into the story a bit more, there's got to be some consequences, right? Like, but there isn't any. Like, so far we haven't had them get paid for a single job in all of
That's a good
season
point.
2.
How has word not gotten out that these guys are not good to work with? They haven't finished a single job and they always botch it.
Yeah, like
I feel like word would have gotten out in the crime community, the, you know, criminal underworld, like, hey, don't work with these clones. They're gonna botch your job.
yeah, they're gonna mess it up in favor of, you know, saving an innocent person or something like that, right? You know,
Why are they? Yeah, you would think that if you're going to be doing this sort of work, you would have a bit of a skewed moral compass.
yeah, no, it's true. I mean, like, okay, so like, as a tally, you know, for season 2 tally of successes and failures, the first 2 episodes was the whole Dooku thing, and they didn't get a scrap of piece of treasure from that. So that was a bust, right? And then
That could have paid huge. I'm surprised
not a single piece of treasure.
Sid didn't like execute them or sell them after that. That was a lot of coin wasted.
Yep. And then the 3rd episode was the solitary clone. So we didn't see the Bad Batch in that episode, and it was mostly just about Crosshair and Cody. Super great episode. But then we got the faster episode. So that was also like, okay, half the Bad Batch is gone on a mission. We didn't end up getting the results of that mission that the other guys went on, but at least they were able to save Sid's life when she had a bad bet.
That's right.
So I don't know, I guess that's
Gambling
like a neutral.
addiction.
I'm gonna call that a neutral. Like they saved the day from someone who kind of dug their own hole a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like they had to do an episode like that because why else would she keep them around? They don't pay you anything.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next episode, it was Entombed, and they lost the treasure. You know, when we had that big, huge mech monster, and they were after that crystal with the treasure hunting lady, and then they botched that one as well. The crystal gets destroyed, and they got a good story out of it. And then now like the whole business transaction that they had, you know, not only
the simplest job,
dude,
you just drop it off and you leave.
Not only did they lose the stuff that Tech made, like those Imperial chain code chips, but they didn't get paid for the job, and then they ended up going out of their way, as protagonists would, to deliver this Wookiee Jedi back to his homeworld. But it's like that we're almost at the halfway point. They haven't seen a single credit. You know, it's like, where's this going?
I don't know. No wonder they were so happy to drink all the Wookiee juice and eat their food, because they probably haven't eaten in forever.
Yeah,
they can't afford anything.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I don't know if it's just a mistake on the Wikipedia, but there's 2 episodes scheduled for February 8th. So just as a random like flash forward news thing, this Wednesday there might be 2 episodes of The Bad Batch dropping on the same night, which is interesting. I don't know if that's super accurate or not, or maybe this whole schedule's bunk, but yeah, keep your eyes peeled because we might get two more episodes dropping on Wednesday, which tells me that maybe there's an actual arc.
Two for it, make it worth it.
Yeah. It'll be 2 leaving on a cliffhanger, tying into a third one maybe. Like that'd be cool. Because we're at the halfway point, so now I think the worst is behind us in terms of kind of slower episodes, right?
Maybe that's why they did it, so then everything else would be super,
But then it's like, why have
that.
those stories in the first place, right? It's like, because
I mean, there's cool world building and stuff. I mean, we should be happy we got this new the droid thing. I think that's awesome.
It's true. It's true. It's true.
Think of the RP potential now for the next role playing game.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I'll give you that.
Yeah, because prior to that, there was just the 3 different syndicates, right? It's 3 and it's 4.
All right, let's do some Pablo point rating system. All right.
This deal is getting worse all the time.
All right. So new to 2023 onwards, we have a new rating system in town. If those of you who didn't join us last week, we're either giving 3 Pablo points or 3 Pablo Poodoos, and if it's in the middle, you give it a Bendu. So 3 out of 3 Pablo points is like the best. 3 Pablo Poodoos is the worst. Bendu's right in the middle. A single Pablo point might be just kind of all right, but not a 3 kind of thing. So that's how the system works. What's your rating system on this, Blake?
It's tough because there's some cool stuff in here, but I feel like if they spaced out the filler episodes, I'd be more in favor. So I feel like it's hard to give it an accurate, an accurate review because I'm a little bit tainted by that. I guess if I ignored the fact that we've got like 4 filler episodes in a row, if not more than that, I would say it's on the better side of the filler episodes as far as what we've had in Star Wars before. Like I enjoyed this more than a lot like the Rebels filler episodes, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, I think I'd give it at the highest potential, like 1 Pablo point, maybe a neutral.
Okay.
I'll go 1 Pablo point. I'll be favorable.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all right. I mean, got a plus 1 there. So for me, I'm a little torn on this because I do want to give it 1 Pablo point, but I feel like they made a bad call when it came to multiple filler, if you want to call it filler episodes in a row. So I got to give it a Bendu, but I'm not going to go as bad as a Poodoo on this one. I think there was some stuff to value, and a few things that we were able to appreciate there. It wasn't all bad. So I'm giving it a Bendu. It's right in the middle, right in the balance point.
right the balance. That's right.
That's right. So yeah, that's the Bad Batch season 2 episode 6, everybody. And now it's time for some Star Wars news. I was definitely waiting for the land speeder. Here we go. All right, so we have a few headlines to talk about today, and number 1 is new Star Wars Celebration guests, which is pretty exciting. So, Star Wars Celebration, good time to be alive. New guests include Ming-Na Wen, known for playing Fennec Shand in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett.
I always wondered why she wasn't on the original announcement list.
Yeah, they tend to space it out. I don't know why they space it out because, quite frankly, the tickets are sold out anyway, so there's no point.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
like, could you imagine waiting because the person you wanted to see wasn't there, and then it was sold out because they delayed the announcement, even though they knew like months ahead of time? I would be so upset.
Yeah, that would be. My theory is they probably just can't lock down their calendar right away, and they probably just have like X amount of dates where you have to kind of confirm with them whether or not you're going, and then they just kind of pool those confirmations together just so that they can keep up the announcements for PR related material.
Right.
So, because that's all we're getting out of Star Wars Celebration right now. Before Celebration takes place, that's all they can talk about is who's coming. So, they want it to be like a progressive build up, I guess. So, Ming-Na Wen is coming. Eunice Suotamo, might be botching that. That's the actor who plays Chewbacca ever since Peter Mayhew gave up the role.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, nice guy, super nice guy. Yeah. Gwendolyn Christie, who plays Captain Phasma, will be there as well. Matthew Wood, the voice of General Grievous and all the battle droids. You'll also know him as one of the head honchos of Skywalker Sound. And Silas Carson, who played Ki-Adi-Mundi in the prequels, will be there as well.
That's cool.
Yeah. And Aiden Cook, who plays Two Tubes from Rogue One and Andor, I believe. He's the guy that wears the mask, who's like Saw Gerrera's kind of partisan guy.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that guy had a name.
Yeah. I mean,
the character, yeah.
Two Tubes. That's a pretty kind of background character Star Wars name. I mean, it's you know.
But it was a cool character though, because I remember what he looked like. I thought the design of his character was super cool.
It is, yeah. Yeah, he's the one that's like dark cool, it's like that one.
Yeah. Yep, I remember.
And then Bodhi Rook's like I gave it to them. I gave it to them.
I don't understand, man. You gotta stop using those tubes.
Lies.
Can't hear you.
Deceit. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a bit. Yeah. It reminds of Two Tubes. That's like Prune Face. It's another background character name that fans just kind of awarded the name to somebody. I don't think his actual name is Two Tubes. I've never read it anywhere in a book.
Okay.
But
because of characters like Prune Face, like there's other, because I think like I said, Prune Face is a fan. No, that was his real name. Never mind. I was gonna say that's a fan-oriented name, but that was actually his name on the action figure.
Yeah,
so that's a legitimate character.
Yeah. Prune Face. Yeah. No, it's like it's an official name that came from the fan community, and it's just they just ran with it, right?
Oh, okay, that's what's going on.
I think that's what this
who
is.
knows?
Yeah, I think that's what this
maybe
is.
Maybe that was Two Tubes as well then.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be funny. All right, cool. So next up on the list is Solo. So fans of Solo will know that we did not get a sequel to Solo yet, and we won't. So sorry to kill the party. The story continues in a new novel by the author E.K. Johnson, who is most famously the author who wrote the Ahsoka novel, as well as I'm blanking on it. She definitely wrote something else. The Padme trilogy. She comes in writing a new book called The Crimson Climb, and it's a book starring Kira as the main character, and I believe this is about her ascension into Crimson Dawn, and perhaps after Solo takes place. That's what would make sense to me.
Because when that left off, she became the leader of the Syndicate, right? Because they killed what's his face?
Dryden Voss, yeah.
That's his name. I was gonna call him what? I'm blanking on his name now. But the character from Iron Man.
Right. Yeah. So Vision. Right. You mean Paul Bettany?
Even older than that. I wasn't even gonna call him Vision. I was gonna call him
Jarvis.
Jarvis, thank you. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
When he was just a voice.
Yeah.
He'll always be Jarvis to me.
Yeah. So after the death of Dryden Voss, Kira has kind of ascended into that position, and so maybe this book could be about her climb, in terms of Crimson Dawn, which is, as we know, the criminal organization led by Maul, and might fill in some gaps, because we don't really. That's the one part of Maul's story that we don't really have a clear picture on, is kind of what happens to Darth Maul between Solo and Rebels when he ends up, on Malachor, kind of trapped there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Maybe he has to do a Gungi.
Yeah.
Takes Gungi on as an apprentice.
Yeah, maybe. I have been waiting for you. Never mind.
Carry on your way.
Carry on.
Changed my mind. Can't stand that infernal sound.
All right, we got a new soundtrack called Obi-Wan Kenobi: A Jedi's Return from the composer Scott Michael Smith. Really nice soundtrack by Scott Michael Smith and Michael Dean Parsons. This is the soundtrack that they made for the Disney Gallery behind the scenes of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I don't know if anyone saw that. And did you saw that, I'm assuming, right?
I think it's the first I've heard of it, actually.
Okay, all right. So it's a behind-the-scenes documentary about the series and just kind of like the makings of, and it's a single kind of hour-long or 45-minute thing, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty neat, and they actually did a full soundtrack just for this look behind the curtain. So,
cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly like a in-universe Star Wars soundtrack, but
yeah, it sounds a little bit witchery to me, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a bit more like I guess it's supposed to kind of capture the essence of Star Wars, but from like a behind-the-scenes kind of standpoint, I guess,
Okay.
Yeah, there's like another one here saying there's one. This one's pretty good. Like, we are back. I believe they played this one when they played a clip of Hayden at Celebration, doing his thing. I'll skip ahead a little bit. So, yeah, it's got some emotion to it.
A lot of emotion. I feel like someone's died. Farewell, Hayden.
Yeah.
Farewell, Hayden.
We will remember you. Will you remember me?
Oh man, that brings me back. Yeah, so that's some Star Wars news. Oh, and I'm forgetting one more thing. Of course, we have Star Wars Visions announced Volume 2 episode titles and the studios that are making them. So let's take a look at this. The first one is called Sith, and that's by El Giri, I guess. How do you pronounce that?
Sure.
Elgiri? Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Second one's called Screecher's Reach by Carton Saloon. And the third one is In the Stars by Punk Robot. Fourth one's called I Am Your Mother by Ardman. We got Journey to the Dark Head by Studio Mur. The Spy Dancer by Studio Le Chate. The Bandits of Golak by 88 Pictures. The Pit by De Art Stagio, I think, and Lucasfilm Limited. And the last one is AU's Song by Triggerfish. So, yeah, looking forward to those. I mean, we had a good time breaking down Volume 1 of Star Wars Visions last year, I believe it was, or 2 years ago. 2 years ago now.
Yeah,
yeah.
It was a really good time. I know the first season, if you can call it a season, of anime they put out, I thought it was fantastic. There's a lot of really, really unique storylines that I thought were worthy of their own theatrical release, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. So, we're looking forward to chatting about this. We'll be back on with Bryce and and just kind of doing what we do. Talking about what makes this series awesome. It's more Star Wars to talk about. Yeah, exactly. So. Sweet. All right. So that covers pretty much all the news that we've got loaded up on there. Let's get on to our next subject, which is games and board games pre and post Disney era. Oh man, that landing speeder is always late.
Taxi. It's like when you call a cab and they're super late.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh,
This
man.
deal is getting worse all the time.
Oh, we got that one on time all the time. But yeah, it's okay. So Disney games, Lucasfilm games, post Disney era. I mean, you're the one who kind of suggested this topic.
Yeah, I thought it'd be super cool just to talk about the comparison.
Yeah.
Just to, like I thought it'd be good to talk about like what we think of like quality pre and post Disney and like the like release schedule of stuff we've received.
Yeah.
And see, I know we've talked briefly about it when we talk about specific games, but I thought it'd be nice to do a little bit of a deeper look at, I guess if things are being handled the way we'd like it to be, or if we're happy with the direction the games are, the quality of games and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a great subject because of course we have Star Wars Jedi Survivor right around the corner, which is a sequel to what is it, 3 years ago for Jedi Fallen Order. And
yeah, I think that's about right.
Yeah, so this is kind of a really highly anticipated next gen Star Wars video game, which will be the first for next gen consoles, I believe. And it's one of those conversations, I think, like just in general, it's a topic in which, like, pre Disney, we had so many Star Wars games, and there's been,
yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about it.
yeah, decades worth of Star Wars games, and over the last almost 10 years now since Disney's owned the license, what is there? Right? Like,
It's weird.
I don't know what it is, but Star Wars games have really kind of quietened down a little bit. Just like, it's like there's been a lot less of them and a lot less releases. So I mean, just in general, what are your thoughts on this exclusivity of the license that EA had for so long up until last year? Because that was last year is when it finally changed. Yeah.
Honestly, I think it was just a corporate decision where Disney was like, hey, we don't want to handle this.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll let EA deal with it. They have multiple studios. We'll just give it to them and they'll just take care of it. And we don't have to worry about it. I think that's where the decision came from. And I think it was released because probably like released from EA as a private deal, because they weren't putting out enough games, which I know is a common gripe amongst a lot of Star Wars fans. Like, I'm just looking here, going through a list of all the Star Wars games, and there's like 4 or 5 games per year from like 1990 onward.
Yeah, it's it's crazy, like how many there used to be. Not to mention the rapid evolving of Star Wars of consoles, permitted so many Star Wars games to come out in a very short amount of time. I mean, if you just look at the period between the late 90s to 2010, I mean, we had there was so many things. There was like all the Game Boys, the Nintendo DS, the GameCube, just an incredible amount of maybe my timeline's off, but I think the Wii came out in that time as well. We had the original Xbox 360, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3.
Oh yeah. Must have been multiple consoles. Like, so I'm looking at the lead up to the Phantom Menace releasing, and 97, 98, 99 all had at least 5 games. Right. And a lot of them are like big games, like Star Wars Dark Forces 2, Jedi Knight, and then there's what we got here. Star Wars Rebellion came out right around then. Star Wars Squadrons. Like, it's not even just like they were throwing stuff at the wall. Like, there's some stuff that admittedly I haven't played, but there's a number of games that even came out amongst like the shotgun fire of games that were huge games that I remember quite vividly, and everyone had a copy of it. Like, they were quite popular.
Yeah. It's really it's strange that that things have taken a turn to exclusivity licenses, because when multiple publishers all had the ability to do what they do, I feel like we just got more content, right? Like more games. How is that a bad thing for Lucasfilm? It's just
That's exactly it. Like,
yeah,
the only other thing I can think of that is causing the drastic change of pace is games probably take a lot more dev work, development time before release, just to get the high level of graphics and everything everyone's expecting. Like that's
right.
There's a lot more work on that end. Games were a lot simpler than 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
But going from minimum 2 games a year to 1 game every 3 years, I like that doesn't cut it. Like, come on, guys.
yeah. It's and this also kind of plays into. I can understand them doing this for the sake of maybe like story narrative, like obviously approaching it from the standpoint that they have to do all of these campaigns that take place within the canon. I get it's a bit to juggle when you have so many different publishers kind of all doing their own thing. But at the same time, it's like, that's why they have the story group, right? Like that's what they do. So just like hire more people, make it bigger, there's always a way to do it. Right. And so I just don't get, if that's the concern, why give one single license to EA and not to other people? Like, why not just say, okay, EA, here's a license for 2 years, make a good game within that time period or whatever, and we can renew if the time comes. You got a mobile game on the market that's doing pretty well. We'll renew it when we get there. In the meantime, we'll give the license out to this studio over here, which is interested in making a game like this. It fits our story in this time period. They could stack the games in a way that they do with the shows, right? Or the movies. Multiple different creative teams all doing different stories, and at the end of the day, they all come together. And only recently did they start doing that. Bethesda's doing their Star Wars game. Respawn/EA is doing theirs, and I'm pretty sure there's like a third player somewhere that's I think it was like Massive or something like that. I think it's doing one as well. But now we got some variation. But for the longest time, it's like, dang, okay, Battlefront, wait, Battlefront 2, wait.
Yeah, Squadrons, a long wait too.
Squadrons, and then Jedi Fallen Order. Okay, now it's picking up. Wait.
Wait.
Like, this is like, man, I don't know how much more I can take. Like, I remember growing up on like there were so many people who were introduced to Star Wars because of games, right? Like, if you
for sure.
Ask anyone.
Like, I know during the droughts of films, like it was games that really kept me involved as a Star Wars fan, because I didn't read a lot of novels till after I was done high school.
Right.
It's like stuff like Force Unleashed. Like, if it wasn't for that, I probably would be a Lord of the Rings fan right now instead of a Star Wars fan. Not to say I don't like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, and also it's like some kids even get introduced to Star Wars because of the games, right? Like maybe their first exposure to Star Wars is the Lego game, or oh man, that was the other thing too. Was like Star Wars Lego was the other thing that kept me involved. It was really those two things. Yep.
Simultaneously that kept my interest.
Yep, exactly.
Because I didn't watch the animated series till years later. I know that's one thing that kept you involved as a fan for a long time.
Yeah, it did, and another thing is the mobile game market is really kind of I hate to say it's taken a bit of a decline. Nintendo's we've talked about the Switch on a previous episode, I believe, but
you kind of got a sore spot for the Switch. I think.
I do, man. Okay, like here's the thing. Like, it's not like I hate the Switch or anything, right? Like I like it. It's fun. It's a good time with friends, but like it really killed the handheld business, right?
Market,
like it's just like it just took a sledgehammer to the Nintendo DS and what came before it, which was like the Game Boys. And I mean, not to say like I'm sure that 3DS kind of played a part in killing itself, but it really just kind of comes down, and it's like the processing power of the Switch is definitely more than the DS. But at the same time, look what the Switch did to the consoles as well. I mean, it was basically just a Wii U that they kind of ditched the external box, and now you can play it anywhere, kind of thing. And then like detach the sides, and now you got 2 controllers. So it's like, it evolved from the Wii U, but look how the Wii became the Switch and how different it is. And couch gaming is no longer the same for Nintendo fans because of the Switch, but neither is handheld either, right? And they used to coexist at one point. So you had kids on like a Game Boy, but then they were able to go to someone's house and like the GameCube was like also a new thing. So, you had 2 different consoles by the same, just more diversity, right? And then you had games for each of those things. So like the Star Wars Attack of the Clones GBA game, Game Boy Advance, like I was able to play that, as well as Star Wars Attack of the Clones, the New Droid Army. Great Game Boy Advance games. If anyone still has a Game Boy or uses an emulator or whatever, fantastic games. And then if you went on the GameCube, you were able to play Star Wars The Clone Wars, which was, it was like a Geonosian arena style game, which was pretty cool. And, there was also like the Lego games and, so many other things. That game. Yeah. And then, there were so many different things that you could get. And it's just, to me these days, it's like not only has Star Wars game slowed down because of maybe the licensing or whatever it is, but also I think it's in part because there's not enough quick-paced leveling up of hardware for consoles and mainly because handhelds are just kind of gone at this point. If you do consider the Switch a console and not a handheld,
you can blame that though partially on smartphones, because people will just play games on their phone instead of buying a handheld gaming device.
Yeah, but then here's the thing, right? Because like, so I look back at like maybe like the PS Vita or like the PSP or something. There was a few Star Wars games that came out on PSP. And
I just Star Wars Renegade Squadron.
Like
my fist.
You can
never got to play that.
Yeah, like you can buy Knights of the Old Republic as an app, right? In the Google or Apple stores, you can buy it as an app for like $12 or $18. It's the full game that they took, from PC or whatever, just smushed it down into an application sized game, and that was it, right? And now pretty much like how it works is you get those free to play apps where it's just like I don't know, you pick it up for a couple weeks and then you're done with it, right? There's no story, there's no nothing. It's all just kind of like arena fights and
that's my issue too, excluding Jedi Fallen Order. That's really all we get is these games that really don't have any story to them. They're just kind of button mash fighting games or filler games almost.
Exactly, yeah. And if someone has a hot take about this whole like handheld, Switch, like death of Star Wars games and like anything like that, like just like start up a forum or something in our Discord server, because like I'd like to hear any other like opinions about this, because like
takes on it. Yeah.
Again, I don't hate the Switch. It's just like we saw a whole death of like gaming technology, and I think that's kind of in a way just helped kill off licensed games in a way, and also because a lot more developers these days are trying to do their own stuff. Like, how many exclusives does PlayStation have? How many exclusives does like Xbox have? And there's never going to be a Star Wars game that's just exclusive to like one console. I know
not these days.
No,
that was a thing back in the day. That's why I still haven't played Star Wars Bounty Hunter, because it was on PlayStation 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's a thing, right? Like it was on PlayStation and I think it was on GameCube as well. But it didn't.
Yeah, all I had was an Xbox.
It didn't show up on. Yeah. It didn't. It wasn't on Xbox. So like nowadays, I feel like the only great example to compare is probably the Knights of the Old Republic remastered for next gen PlayStation, because that was only announced for PlayStation, but that game has not seen any light of day since the announcement. So
that's it. That's my other gripe, is they keep announcing stuff and then just crickets until they quietly cancel it. It's
Oh
getting
yeah.
really old.
Oh, it's getting really old. It's old new. Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, for sure. And it's like, what is going on these days? Like, it's just a different world that we live in. And then it translates over to board games too. There was a lot more ingenuity in Star Wars board games back in the day.
Well, that being said, I do want to point out that I feel like around the time of the early 2000s, there was a lot of board games that were unique, like they're pushed out and they had unique rules. But a lot of them were pretty janky. And this isn't Star Wars exclusively. I remember I had an old Lego Bionicle board game that was just bizarre.
Right.
So that was, I think, a bit of, the times.
Yeah.
But sometimes they're really good. Like I remember you had this weird one-off Star Wars board game that was around the prequels that was actually really good.
Yeah. I have a few actually. So one of them is called Epic Duels, and
that's the one I was thinking of. Was that one? Yeah,
it came out before Episode 3 was a thing, and so it only featured characters from the original trilogy and Episode 1 and 2. And you have a miniature with like a health card and a deck of cards, and it's a really small board, checker style kind of movement system. And you go around and you just essentially try to kill like the other players, and that's pretty much it. But it was cool because like it was just unique and different, and there's never been anything quite like it ever since. And there's while we're talking about it,
you say that, but I feel like that's where a lot of the current Star Wars games are, especially like the FFG games. There's even a little bit of like the combat system what we get with kind of like the Star Wars Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that even that's more complicated than this game was. Like it was like it was very simple. Like you have an attack value, the other person's got a defense value if they want to use it on a card. Maybe they don't have a card, in which case they can't defend. And it works so simple. Like you can only fire your blaster in it diagonally or straight forward or backward or whatever. Not like Star Wars miniatures or maybe like Legion where you have to use like line of sight, which is what like a lot of war game, like miniature war games use as far as like the rules. Like all those are quite different. Like tabletop miniature army games, like I would throw Legion in the mix. I would throw X-Wing in the mix. I would throw Armada.
Star Wars miniatures.
So yeah, even that's pre-Disney. So that also uses line of sight. That game was around for a while. I love that game to death, but it's still not technically a board game. But as far as like actual board, we're talking about this is a single box like Monopoly. You just go to the store, you buy a box. It's all in one box. There's no expansions. There's no nothing, right?
Oh, then if you're doing that, then you can't count anything post Disney because they're all expansion games.
Exactly. I mean, so yeah, even Imperial Assault, like that was an FFG Star Wars game. It was cool, but it also like it had 1 million expansions to it, and it killed itself. And then I've really enjoyed Outer Rim a lot. But again, that's a game where there's like a single box expansion to it. And it's just like the thing that games do. At least that's a game in a box, though, where you don't need to buy like 1 million things. But
again, that's a generational thing, I think, because even just like outside of heritage games like Monopoly have been around like 1 million years, they all have expansions.
Yeah,
all these modern board games, they're all like that because that's how these companies make more money. Totally. They just sell the one. Like I feel like the board game community is only so big. So once everyone owns your game, who do you sell to? Well, so you got to sell the same people more stuff.
Yeah. There's that too. I feel like that's just it's too bad that they look at it like almost like movies. It's like, oh, we got a good movie. Let's make like 4 sequels to it and just keep it going, right? Because we why break what or what's the expression? Like, it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing, right? So So like, why make something new? This game is popular. This game works. Like, let's just make an expansion. And then it goes one step further. Why buy a
second cow when the first one still got milk?
Yeah. Well, then they go one step further. Let's design a game in which the rules are set up so that we can make expansions for it, right? And that's how it works. That's how everything works these days. How video games work these days. Like, oh, you got to get the DLC. But it's just like I've got so many good games from just like the pre-Disney, pre-modern area Epic Duels is one of them. Jedi Unleashed is another. It was all in one box. It's like you got your dice, your pieces, your board. That's it. Some cards, one packet of rules that don't get updated. You know what I mean? Like,
because there's no internet.
Yeah,
like really in the 90s, you print the rules. Any typos are there forever.
Oh my goodness! Like I saw X-Wing. I mean, this is old news now, but X-Wing has like a 2.0 version to it. So not only did they relaunch the exact same game with all the same stuff, it's all different rules, different cards. You gotta you gotta buy a conversion kit for your old chips if you want to play in the 2.0 tournament rule set. And then not to mention every now and again you have to go to the website and download the new rule book with like new scenarios and new stuff. And I'm like, what is this? Like, this is just, it's too complicated, man. Like, what happened to simple board games? And maybe that's why people don't play them anymore. Maybe that's why people who play board games now. Common. Yeah, maybe that's why the only people that play board games now are like the hobbyist board gamers, right? Like the ones that are willing to invest the time and the money to like, paint up their figures and like do the whole shenanigans, because that's just the only type of game that's available these days. Otherwise, we're talking about Star Wars games only because there's a lot of great, normal board games out there. But
I would say, barring like Star Wars games and because Lord of the Rings never had a lot of games either, so that's kind of consistent still. Yeah. So really, just these big franchises, barring them, I actually think right now is like the age of board games. Right. There's so many unique tabletop games coming out. Totally. It's like, why can't Star Wars do that?
Exactly. So
I think it's exclusivity because FFG has the license, right? So it's only games that they put out. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, and they've had that license for too long. They've had it ever since Disney acquired the company. Yeah, right.
That's it. I think we're seeing the same issue on both sides here because. Don't get me wrong, I really like FFG games, but I do want some variety, and I feel like they've had it so long that we're just getting the same thing. Like you said, they're just re-releasing Star Wars X-Wings. Like, yeah, come on, do something new, something fresh. I feel like EA experimented with Jedi Fallen Order. And I think that was responded to really well. So I'm hoping that it changes the direction.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. So, here's hoping that we get some bright future coming around the corner in which we've got varieties of Star Wars games that do tend to also fit in the canon story as well, because they can do it. And then board games, let's hope that we keep getting, or let's hope that we get some new Star Wars board games that are all in the box. You don't need to buy an expansion for it. It's just in the box, ready to go, simple to play, let's do something like that.
That'd be great. Yeah. I'd be down for that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. Any last minute things that you want to bring up before we wrap it up here?
I think it's just exciting seeing things starting to take a direction that's very positive here. So I think in regards to Bad Batch, I feel like the next episode, it's got to be a story episode, right? Especially with that 2-fer. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
And, Jedi Fallen Order 2 is just around the corner. Let's hope that also is released and has a positive response from the community, and that they did a great job and keep moving in this direction. And hey, maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel for this, the dark times of Star Wars gaming we've been living in here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Awesome. All right, buddy. Well, we will catch you in the next one.
We'll see you out there. Keep flying.
Alrighty, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning into Star Wars Escape Pod this past week and for celebrating Star Wars Podcast Day with us. 2023, big year. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff, cool announcements right around the corner for Star Wars celebrations. So keep tuning in with us each week on the podcast. We got some good news, some good updates coming your way. In order for us to keep on top of Star Wars Celebration news when that comes out, when that event hits the internet, we'll be putting on some good follow along activities in the Discord server. So make sure you join that. We got DJ Rex playing tunes, movies, entertainment, whatever. A lot of the time, currently in the Discord server right now. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, which we're now doing YouTube premieres Tuesdays. We're trying to hit Tuesdays at 1 p.m. And so make sure you drop a 5-star, leave a review, Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever podcast reviews are found. And we will catch you in the next episode of Star Wars Escape Pod. May the Force be with you.